All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hey, everybody. Good evening, and welcome to tonight's episode of Teen Talk Live. I am your host, Dillard, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. And you are so fortunate to have two LMFTs in the house tonight. And I want you to help me to welcome my guest, Mr. Anthony Parham, who is also a licensed marriage and family therapist. And tonight, our show is talking about helping teens navigate grief, right? Something that we don't necessarily talk about a lot, but share this out, tag somebody, let them know that we're talking about grief. And how it impacts teens here tonight on Teen Talk Live. Hi, Anthony. Welcome.
Hey, it's good to see you. Good to be here.
Yes, I am so glad that we made the connection in California.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right? And now here we are on Teen Talk Live talking about teens and grief. So give my audience a little update. Tell them a little bit about who you are and how you serve in the world.
Yeah, so again, I'm Anthony Parham, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist out in San Diego County. I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, California. However, through my travels and through my journey in life, it's brought me down here to San Diego to be able to serve. Most of the individuals that I work with or collaborate with are people of color who can't afford to have therapy services. And so I work with a lot of foster youth, I work with a lot of teenagers and children, and then I also do the family component as well. So for me, even though I'm working with a teen or a child, I really believe that the family component is super important. So I'm always inviting or mandating that some of our families come in with once a month so that we can be able to do updates with one another and just continue to commune on a family level to be able to get work and progress with each other. So yeah, I mean, out here in San Diego also, as I said before, so I work with foster youth, but so I'm a director of foster care for San Diego. And then also I've volunteered for the last 6 years with the Elizabeth Hospice Center for Compassionate Care, helping our youths and teenagers who have had somebody die in their life and supporting them in grief groups, as well as individual therapy as well. And then we have camps that we help support our teens and children as well who are in the bereavement process. Because we know it's a lifelong journey. So.
Right. That is such important work because a lot of times when we're working with families, we see in cases where, you know, the family might be going through a crisis, or there might be something that happens in the community or in the school, but it's not necessarily brought up to in a way where the teen is addressed about it or even help to navigate those kinds of things. So I think what you're doing is really, really important.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a very good point with that. You know, a lot of the times these things that are happening, they're not addressed. And that becomes another part of the trauma that they have to now experience and go through and live with. Can you imagine what it's like to not be told about the information that happened to a loved one who died? You know, and it's very broad in the way that it's explained to you as a teenager or as a kid even. And then you have to then figure out, put all the pieces together yourself. And our teens are resilient and they play detective really, really well. They'll get the information somehow, and it's hard when they're not getting it straight from the source, from the family member or parents.
And that's so true. And when I think about that, I can say a lot of times the parents or the loved one or the caring adult in their life might not even know how to process that information themselves. Yeah. Let alone have the responsibility to help that teen navigate that space.
Yeah, and I think that's where it comes from. They don't have maybe their own support systems, or they feel like they're trying to protect their child or their teen. And so a lot of those times they withhold that information until they can put it together and process it for themselves, that this is not a reality yet for them. It just hasn't hit home that this is real. This has happened. This person has died. And they were a huge part of my life, or maybe they weren't a huge part. They were a part of their life, though. And so they're trying to figure it out and process it at the same time, in real time. And in real time, these teens are also trying to figure it out for themselves. So we see parents, guardians, other individuals who are part of these teens' lives kind of move in one of two directions. Either they get really attached to them and helicopter, or they, completely back out and they're on the other side of the spectrum and they give absolutely no attention because they're trying to regulate themselves first. So you see that, and really it's right in the middle. This, and for each person, each teen, each parent, each guardian, each person who has had a person die, it's going to be a different journey and what that looks like. And you'll be on one side of the spectrum or another. You just have to know your child well enough, or the person who you're really working with well enough as well.
Yeah. And I know that you were talking about somebody who has died, but I think it's fair to share with our audience that, when we're talking about grief and loss, it's not limited to death.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
Right. So would you mind sharing with my audience some of the instances to look at and to explore what's happening with grief and loss? Because I think sometimes we miss it by just limiting our view of they need to be grieving this thing.
Right, absolutely. And I think that's the difference. You're right on the money with that. So, grief comes in all shapes, sizes, and forms. There's a ton of different ways that a person can be grieving. We're looking at divorce. You look at the loss of a relationship. You look at for our youth who are in the foster care system, for instance, their parents are not in their life anymore. Their caregiver's just not in their life anymore. So you have all these different instances of ways where we will be grieving. The loss of a job, right? The loss of maybe a home. Maybe something was going on and they had to make a move to a new location. There's these little micro transitions that are happening, and figuring out ways that they can be supported in those micro transitions and find some light, at the other side of that, and figuring out some new space for themselves to grow in that. Mm-hmm.
I think that's really important, because I remember when my daughter was in the third grade, her third grade teacher was ill a lot, right? And that means she was out of school a lot. And I think that caused a gap in her learning, because that caring adult in her school environment wasn't consistent.
Right.
We had subs and things like that. So I think it's important that people who are watching extend their view of loss and different things could contribute to the grieving process. Absolutely. And back then I didn't even know anything about this. So needless to say, I didn't know how to help her navigate that, because I had no awareness.
Yeah. And again, it comes back to, well, I guess we'll get to that piece as well. Part of being able to support somebody in many of the capacities of that they're grieving in, you can't pretend that because most likely you don't. And even if you're in a similar situation, you will never have that person's perspective ever, right?
Right.
We don't have the same story. It's just like they talk about, two siblings that grow up in the same household have two completely different stories around what happened in that household. So similarly, like in your daughter's situation, this individual leaving, the best thing, and again, you did the best you could with what you know, and you're a bomb.com woman as it is, so I'm sure she was fine. However, in terms of support, for those individuals and providers, and so on, really just, again, not acting like When you act like you know, you take away from that individual's story and where they are, you're not validating them in their experience of where they are. They want to be heard. Sometimes they don't even want a solution. They just want to know that somebody else is listening. You
Yes.
know, so I'm telling them, I can't even imagine how you're feeling. I'm just happy that you told me. That
Right.
might be some space that you're giving them to be able to continue venting or continue feeling and expressing in front.
Right, right. I think that's really important. I can't say that enough. So let's talk a little bit more about instances where we see teenagers suffering with grief, right? And what it might look like. Now, I when I was in school-based mental health therapy, a lot of my clients came from like really tough neighborhoods where they came to school with the grief of the community.
Yeah.
There were a lot of shootings. There were a lot of so much poverty and different things that contributed to the stresses and the traumas that they brought to the school environment. And so when we think about even teachers who might be watching, what can we say to them about some of the stories and some of the legacies and burdens and stressors that their students are bringing into the classroom?
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know um yeah.
Yeah, I think I know where you're going with that. Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of historical trauma, right? We're talking forever ago trauma that our youth, our teens are coming into these environments with. You know, I think my story is a similar example of that. Being born and raised in LA and moving to the Inland Empire, as a teenager and having to experience those kinds of things. The grief of the community on my back, on my shoulders, in my blood, in my bones, every day, and coming into the classroom, coming into the community, and then also being one of at that time one of the fewer people of color in each of those classrooms, right?
Yeah.
I don't have I've lost a sense of community because I don't have a lot of individuals that I can connect with who get it. There's something about when we are people of color, it doesn't matter what color, when we see each other and we talk to each other, there's some things we just don't have to say out loud and we get it. And so for these teachers, understanding that there is that grief there, right? There's the grief of them losing that sense of community and that sense of connection. So is there a way that maybe you can connect them unawkwardly to a community like that? And it doesn't have to be the same type of community, but give them options of different types of communities they can be involved in that maybe they can connect with. So for instance, if we're talking about a Latinx community, cool, give them options on where they can go. If we're talking about, the African American community, give them options of where they can go. Different Middle Eastern populations and subgroups, give them options of where they can go and how they can be supported. And so this way they don't feel alone, but they also feel like there is somebody who genuinely has their interests at heart. Give them space, give them a little bit more time to process some of the things that are going on because culturally they're not the same. It doesn't matter. Even if, for instance, you're coming from LA and you're moving to San Diego, and even if you do have individuals who do look like you, who sound like you, who walk and talk like you, it doesn't mean that you still hold the same cultural values. And so don't assume, right? And that's part of the cultural awareness piece. Don't assume, ask questions. How can I support you? I genuinely have an interest in trying to understand better. Is there something that's going on that I'm unaware of? And if there is, let me know so I can figure out how I can best be a supportive partner with you. I want to see your success. We don't have enough people saying I want to see you succeed. Instead, they're saying I want to see you read. Right? They're not saying I want to see you succeed. It's more than about reading that book. It's
That's
about
right.
instilling values and skills that are going to help them and elevate to then being autonomous and picking out a book for themselves. That's going to provide knowledge and wisdom as they apply that knowledge later on in life.
That is so true. That is so true. So I think about um the burden, and the things that our young people are going through, and sometimes as parents we dismiss those things, right? We like to say, well, when I was a teenager, um,
Right.
we did this, that, the other, and I knew how to do this, and we bring up those things, but I think it minimizes their experiences that they're having right now,
Mhm.
because being a teenager in today's society is difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's challenging. And so let's talk to the parents who don't even have a clue or a concept of some of the struggles that our teenagers bring to the table now, that contribute to their grieving.
Yeah, absolutely. So you got technology nowadays has really, it's been a platform for psychological, social, emotional abuse of our teens and of our kids. And I think that it's a big part of the contribution to, the extension of the grief process. They're transitioning from, let's just again look using the location as a transition point A to B. The things that can take place on social media, from the bullying, the shaming, the blaming, these are all things that are going to extend that grieving process. That grief process has now been extended. That bereavement process is now has been extended, depending on what we're talking about, right? So our parents, I think, being a supportive figure in that, it's not that. A lot of times I get parents who come in and we're talking about these different types of grief. They feel, again, to helicopter, and they feel like that's the best form of support. Again, you got to balance your child, your teen. They need their own space and autonomy to grow. However, if you leave a door open that allows for them to feel safe and secure in talking to you about whatever might be going on those platforms, right? Now it's an invitation,
Yeah.
instead of them feeling like, okay, now you, mom and dad, caregiver, grandparent, whoever, now you're contributing to the problem, right? You don't want them to feel like you're contributing to the problem. You want them to feel like you are a part of the solution. I appreciate that you're checking in on me without being invasive. You're checking in on me and just asking, how am I doing? Has anything else come up on social media? I remember you talked to me about some things that happened on the internet. Have things continued to go more of the same, or things getting better? And just be where they are, and mirroring back to your youth. What they just said is a great way for them to continue to open up to you. If I'm a teenager and I'm saying, yeah, this week was a little bit better, and I just stopped talking. As a parent, I'm going to say, okay, this week was a little bit better. I wonder how. Then the team might continue on and start talking a little bit more. But by you inserting, it makes it a little bit harder, because they're going to shut down. They want to offer the information. They don't want you to pry it. They just want to know that you're there for support. They don't want to think that you're trying to take away from their own story. Yeah, they don't want you contributing to their narrative, right? Because they already feel like
Now that's hard, because the minute, look, I'm learning how to do this thing, right? But as a mom, if my teen said this week is a little bit better, I'm gonna be honest with you. This is not the therapist mom. This is me. I would be like, better than what? What happened? What happened last
week? My bad. I was going under the impression that they already told you about something that happened in the past on social media.
Okay.
And then they were saying, now as you checked in on them the next week.
Because
but I on that. We want to know. We want to understand what's going on. Somebody messing with my baby, my son.
I'd be like, what? Better than what?
Right.
What are we talking about?
and I think the other piece of that, again, comes back to, if we provided some safety and security, and knowing that they can come and talk to mom, they can come and talk to pop, they can come and talk to whoever the caregiver is, we have less to worry about that they're going to come and do that. We have less to worry about there being secrets or hiding behind a closed door, and on a phone, what's happening with them on that level, right, on the virtual level.
Yeah, but
Go, please, please.
Again,
That's why it's a combo. I feel you. It's a combo. That's what we're doing. Yeah.
that's hard because, as parents, okay, we're learning how to do this parenting thing, right?
Right on.
So we and I know you have two children, and you're navigating this space as well, but we're learning how to do this parenting thing, and sometimes we say a lot of things that cuts cuts our kids off. I mean, we're genuinely concerned, but because we don't necessarily know how to communicate effectively, right, we will say things that'll shut them down.
Right, right. And that's why I'm talking about the mirroring with them, and just really saying back to them what they just said to you, because that provides space. It lets them know that you're hearing them, and not only are you hearing, you're listening, and then you're
Right.
giving back. So it's a little different. And I know a lot of people, well, that's my child, and I want to be able to, I want to know everything that's going on. We all do. And depending on how you go about that, that's going to dictate how much information they give you and what kind of information they give you.
That's right. And you're so right on with that, because that's something that I tell parents. I'm like, yes, you want to know, but you have to be in control of your emotions, because if you're going to fly off the handle at the least little thing, now then your child is going to be like, I can't tell my mom that, or I can't tell my dad that, because they're going to hurt somebody.
Right. After the first time you do it. Exactly.
After the first time you fly off the handle. So you might say, I want you to be able to talk to me. I want you to share with me. But I think for parents, it's important to know that if that's the kind of relationship you're gonna have, then you need to be in control of your emotions.
Absolutely. Because we're supposed to be co-regulator of our youth, right? We're supposed to be modeling that for them. And when they can't handle it, we're supposed to be stable enough, just like a lightning rod, to be able to absorb all that and be stable for them. So if I'm coming in and talking to my sons about something, or if I'm talking to a teen or whoever about something, I should be able to have myself in check long enough to where our conversation is productive. And when I say productive, that means that things were accomplished. We were able to talk about what the main problem was. They were able to feel validated that I was able to have that conversation with them and let them feel heard. We were able to talk about some potential solutions, and maybe there are no solutions at the time other than just giving yourself some space, right? And at least we had those conversations, and now we've now put together a nice little piece that they can come back later on and refer to in their mental, right? Pop was cool when I talked to him about that. I thought for sure he was going to go down to the school, right? But instead, he was open. He was honest, because one thing I tell parents: prime situations like this, if you know you're going to be having some tough roads ahead as teenagers are coming up, prime it. Tell them, listen, I may not agree with everything that you're about to tell me, right, or everything that you tell me as when you do come to me, but know that I'm going to support you, right? And that's me being real, because I love you. You're my child, and I want to make sure that you're safe. So if I hear something, I may not necessarily agree with it. And if it's appropriate, I'm gonna let you know. And I'll tell you right there on the spot, I don't agree with it. I support you. And if this was to not go the way you want it to go, I got you.
I'll be here for you. But okay, so that's good if you understand the concept of being co-regulated.
Right.
Right?
I have a lot of work to do. Yeah,
and if you're watching and you don't understand the concept of being co-regulated, you need to call for a therapy session. We'll help you.
Absolutely.
We'll help you get that, because it's hard as a parent in that moment to think about things like that, but it becomes easier as you practice it more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you don't just you don't just have the blueprint. Let me just pause for a second to welcome all our guests. Hi everybody, thank you so much for joining this conversation with my colleague about navigating grief with our teens. And we're just talking about, first of all, if you can't get them to talk to you, you're not going to be able to help them navigate. So we're talking about communication. Hey, Catrice. Hey, Deborah. And Joseph say it's complicated. Where do parents learn to control their emotions? It's not always natural or easy.
Ever, yeah, ever. I don't think. I think you and I can both agree. It never is easy. You know, it gets to a point of being natural as in that developmental stage for that child, because you're practicing it in that developmental stage.
But here's the thing, by the time you kind of get it in that developmental stage, they're on to the next developmental stage. And you have to figure it out for that stage as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like, look at Black Panther, right? Black Panther's got a range of different weapons that he can use in order to help support himself, right? And like that, we have to have a range of different skills that we can use to support our kids. We never stop learning and we never stop growing. And the moment that we do, we need to, before we get to that moment, we need to be talking to other people and saying, hey, I'm having a challenging time right now, and I don't want to let my children fall beyond my safety net, because we are the safety net, the final place for our kids to be caught. If something was to go wrong, we should be the final place. They should never go below our safety net, and it happens. Yeah. So knowing that, continuously building up your different skills that you have, whether that be you learning how to, like, seriously, and might sound, elementary, whatever, breathing, learning how to breathe and focusing on your breath. Take a moment. I always tell my clients, say, think twice, act once. You think twice and you act once about whatever's about to go down. Because when you're doing that with your children and your teens, if you're thinking twice and you act once, you have the first time that you think about it, go ahead and have your regular reaction inside of your mind. What you want to say, how you want to respond in your mind, and then play off what would those consequences be long term? What would that look like long term if this goes down? The second time that you think, don't think twice. Now you're thinking about maybe what's a better way to go about this to get the result that I want for my children, right? And then you act. Okay? Yeah. Those are just different things that you're gonna have to continuously practice and try. It's not easy at all by any means. Trial and error, everything. I have two sons, and both of them, I have to speak to them both in completely different ways because their temperaments are different. The way they receive information is different.
Right. I mean, that's real talk, because as parents, we normally just do what comes natural, and what comes natural to us is basically how we were raised.
Right.
And even when we know that that wasn't okay and it didn't feel right, because that's what's natural to us, that becomes our default.
Absolutely.
Our default response, right? And so what we're talking about is increasing your toolbox, your communication toolbox, learning those skills to help you regulate your own emotions so that you can co-regulate with your child who's experiencing grief. And we're talking about grief. That's just one thing. This works for any kind of situation that that child is navigating and needs your help.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's one of those things where, at the Diversity and Parenting Conference, one of our speakers, what she wrote was, we don't have to do everything that our parents did, even if it worked. That's 100 right there. We don't, even if it worked, we don't have to. It's multiple ways to get into a stadium, right? You choose your entry and you can choose what route you come in. It doesn't have to be the same route that your family took or your caregivers took. Because when you're in the grief process, you're not going to be able to take the same thing over and over again. The same thing that worked today may not work tomorrow. So I have to try a different entrance. And maybe that doesn't work. And that's okay too.
Yeah. And that requires a whole lot of intentionality, intentional parenting, right? Being the intentional parent, conscious parenting. And a lot of times when we're caught up in the struggles of the world, we don't necessarily see or pay attention to being that conscious parent.
Right.
And
absolutely.
um,
Especially,
so I'm sorry, go ahead.
oh no, no, I was just agreeing.
Okay, one of our guests, Mohammed, I think he's watching from Senegal, West Africa. He says teens are difficult to manage. They put all questions in questions, but as parents, we should limit the use of internet. This is the main cause, and I think we all agree that having some boundaries around internet
Right.
is really very critical.
Yes, agreed. The internet, I mean, technology is here to stay. There's
Yeah.
nothing that it's here. It's here. It's not going anywhere. It's only going to expand. I found myself earlier on with my oldest son being more of a less technology person with him and really just going back to rudimentary pen paper type of things that we were doing in terms of entertainment, education, all these things. Uh, Later on, I realized, you know what, this isn't going to work, and I'll tell you why. And again, going back to the diversity and parenting conference, where so many people like yourself who were able to give their wisdom put me on game. And one of the things that we talked about was understanding if I'm a youth and if I'm a parent and I'm not allowing my youth to be a part of that technology cycle that's going on right now, that's all they're doing in school. That's the way that they're learning in school is on iPads or laptops. And I wouldn't be surprised if they switch to a smartphone that's in the classroom one day, right?
That's it.
We've got virtual reality machines, and things like this technologies that are being utilized, which are incredible things. If you think about it, they're incredible. You can be inside of an atom in the blink of an eye by putting on a virtual reality device. Like that's incredible. Learnings that we never had. I think also, like you said, there has to be the boundaries around it too. If we make it a barrier, if we put a barrier on it, now we're limiting our youth's abilities to be current in the job market once they get older,
That's
right?
right.
Because right when they get older, they're going to have to go out and be competitive in the field.
Mm.
So if they are going to have to do that, we're taking away from their ability to do so.
Yes.
However, if we're overly allowing them to have that technology, now it cuts into their ability to have social emotional conversations and connect with people on a one-to-one level, right? Their social skills are going to dwindle. They're not going to be able to communicate because they're here instead of right here,
That's
right?
right.
So they're here, and so it's a balance. It really is a balance, and we have to figure that out for what's happening in our community, what's happening with our kids, where they are developmentally. These are the kind of things that those are our challenges as parents that we have to figure out. They're going to get it, even if I continued back then down that path of the way I was with the technology piece. They would have figured it out. They would have figured it out. This is what they're
That's
doing.
that's right. And you're so right on. And Monica says, absolutely, we need boundaries, especially around technology. And that is so true. Here's the deal. When parents come in and they're like, my child is on the internet, I'm going to lock down the cell phones, I'm going to lock down the iPads and things like that.
Yeah.
And I invite them to think about it from a different perspective. So I'm like, okay, can we first start by putting boundaries around it?
Right.
Because it's hard, the horse is already out the gate. Right, so it's hard to reel it all the way in, but how about if you put boundaries around it and teach them appropriate use?
Absolutely.
Because one parent shared with me, she's like, well, I had my child cancel and deactivate their account, and I'm sitting there like, okay, yeah. So then after mom left, I asked the child, so how many other accounts do you have?
Right. Exactly.
And then and they're like, oh, Miss Ann. I'm like, yeah, because they figure out a way to do it, right? And even putting those boundaries, it's what needs to happen. I'm not for cut it off altogether.
Right.
And what we've discovered is having boundaries is more work for the parents initially.
Right. Right. That's,
right?
yeah, that's the challenge. That's the challenge. What does it look like? What does it even look like? How do I do it? Because if I try to do it, what does that say to my kid about me? What is, the ego, right? At the end of the day, you're still parent. You're still parent. So
Yeah.
when you come in and you have those conversations, keep it real, keep it short and sweet, and get to the point.
Yeah,
This is what I'm going to be doing from here on out. This is the
exactly.
reason why. Are there ways that you want to contribute to this? Right now,
Exactly.
into that conversation, and it feels collaborative as opposed to a
Yes.
direct. And you're still parent. You know?
Exactly. And that's so key. And Joseph said intentionality is key. You said intentionality around social involvement, education, focus, boundaries, and standards. It's all about intentionality. And Catrice said, or they'll use other phones. Oh my goodness, how
Yeah.
often do we see this?
Yep.
I told one parent, she's like, well, I'm going to cancel their phone service. I said, don't bother,
Yeah.
because the minute they get in a space where there's internet,
Yeah.
they have full access. And
Absolutely.
she's like, well, I'm taking the cell phone. And I said, well, no, because friends give friends cell phones, because these kids are trading out cell phones so often.
Yep.
Right. And I said, there's a way around it. What I need you to do is to be a parent and have conversations about it and set your boundaries and your expectations around it.
Yep.
For me, cutting it off and
Yeah.
going cold turkey is not the solution.
Not the solution. It's not. And I think that's where our parents, it's coming from a place of fear. It's a fear-based response, understandably so. Again, and now we're talking about, again, the historical traumas. And so, and that's a part of the grief process too. It's a historical trauma. And they're still grieving the things that they've seen, on social media with our youth being killed. They're still grieving the things that have happened to us and the ways that we've been segregated and we've been oppressed. So these are all fear-based responses to what is happening, what has happened to us, and what our current climate is. But they're not solutions.
Exactly.
Come up with more solutions.
And then as parents, right, we're parenting from a fear-based standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Right. I have a family that I worked with, and their youth. His thing was, and he's trying to use a bargain chip, right? So his thing was, I can't go to sleep. So this is why I have a phone, and I asked, okay, well, what time do you usually go to sleep? He says I go to sleep at 10:30. And he's a teen. He's a fresh teen at that. So he's like, I go to bed at 10:30. So what time would you want to go to bed? 11. Okay, well, what would you be doing in that 30 minutes? Well, I could be reading or I could be on my phone. Okay, well, which two do you think mom or dad would like to see you doing? Reading. Okay, how do we get that to happen? And so you're having this dialogue, and you have the genuine interest. He told me straight up that's what he wanted to do, was be on the phone for an extra 30 minutes so he could wind down and go to sleep. But instead of me shutting it down, I'm asking him, I'm coming from a place of curiosity, right? Instead of coming from a place of power and authority, I'm asking, well, which of these options do you think would be something that your parents would buy into? Right?
Yes.
And why do you think that is? So now he gets to process that a little bit more, because they probably don't want me on my phone a little bit longer. Okay, is that something that you're willing to have a conversation with them about? Yeah, I guess I could have a conversation with them about that. And the other part of that was, this is in family therapy. And so I said, Mom and Dad, what are some things that you would like to see differently if your son has that extra 30 minutes? Well, comes home at 4, games until 8, and then he gets ready for dinner in bed. I said, okay, so what could we do differently? Well, maybe he could, he's a great drawer, he's got some artistic ability. I said, okay, so it sounds like you maybe want him to tap back into that. And the kid's sitting over there listening, and he's like shaking his head like, I guess it has been a while since, I touched pen and paper like that. So these are conversations, again, when it comes in and it feels like a dictatorship, that's when youth begin to rebel naturally in their teenage years. But the more we make it a collaborative process, the more we're teaching them, hey, this is how we have conversations where there's give and take and we meet in the middle. And I'm still your parent, but you also know that I'm going to have the final say so, but I'm also going to give you some room to have a conversation with.
That's it. That's so true. Because that collaborative approach is so much more effective
Mhm,
than that authoritarian
mhm.
that says you need to do this because I said so, because I'm the parent,
Yeah,
right? And taking that collaborative approach. And I think one of the reasons why it's hard for parents really, excuse me, to think about that collaborative approach is because they don't necessarily, as parents, you're not giving child development classes,
um,
so you don't necessarily know about that stage of independence that they're trying to gain, and that autonomy that they're trying to build, and that push and pull that's going on. So when you feel that push and pull from your teenager, you really feel like they're trying to rebel, or they're trying to go against you, and
right,
not that this is a natural stage
process.
of development that they're going through.
Yep, exactly, and that's hard. That's really hard. Those are the things that my own biases. We should be talking about those kind of things in school, social emotional development inside of our classrooms when we're younger. Starting at an early age. And there are some schools who are doing that, and that helps us as parents. I had a fourth grader tell me that they were talking about the amygdala and when when they flip their lid. And I know that whole model and stuff. And I said, really now? Okay, what school do you go to? I need to make some referrals
That's
because
right.
we need. And we didn't get that when we were in grade school and stuff like this. It took for us to go to higher education and lived experience in order to get this.
Exactly. Exactly. And Monica's saying that in her school district, they have a slogan now, think twice before you post, slogan to help reduce bullying and promote appropriate social media function. And I think that's really a great thing to implement. So grief, loss, and navigating that space.
Mhm.
What's happening with all these death by suicide and suicide attempts that's going on with our teenagers? I mean, it's skyrocketing.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to, at least what the statistics will tell you, it's coming back to we're not seeing the signs, not recognizing the signs early enough, being proactive instead of reactive. A proactive approach when we start seeing these signs early, then we flood people with support. We don't play around with that. We instantly flood people with support. It doesn't matter if they're telling me they feel a little bit like this or a lot of it like this. We're flooding support. So some of the signs that you're maybe going to want to look for, maybe they're isolating
Yeah.
or drawing. As a teenager, anger. Anger is a big sign of depression. Is a way that our youth and teenagers can act out. In That's how the outburst is a byproduct of the depression, the influence of depression. So when we're seeing things like this, or maybe just feeling edgy, they're snapping back at people very quickly, very short fuses, long sleeved, long clothing items to cover the body and skin, or different places of the skin. Maybe they're a little bit shy to get dressed in the locker rooms, or they want to go to a private restroom in order to do that. And there are other things. Obviously, there are other factors at play that may contribute to those kind of behaviors right there in terms of wanting to be in different areas. But specifically, what I'm talking about is when we're thinking about suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and You're looking at shifts of moods, constant shifts inside of their moods and their behaviors, their thought processes. You may see, for instance, them giving away items or detaching from people or places that they love or used to love, at least anyways. Giving away, for instance, a teenager may give away a necklace that was given to them by somebody at a young age, or that has some monumental, meaning behind it. These are the kind of things that we want to look for early and often so that we can provide support of that. And I think
Yeah.
that the other piece of that is when we suspect, assess. Even if you think a little bit, again, if you suspect, assess, because you don't know. As a provider, as a friend, as a family member, as a supporter, a teacher, however you show up in this person's life, assess and being very direct. You can start from least to most intrusive, however you want to do it, but you must ask to make sure. Are you feeling like hurting yourself or somebody else? And then go directly to, are you having thoughts of killing yourself? And if they say yes to either one of those, then you continue to look for, and I'll use this acronym just because it's easy. PMI, this plan, mean, intent. Do they have a plan of action for how they would do this? If you were, okay, so you said yes. Sounds like it's tough. What would you do? And you ask them straight up. The fact that you've already said that's tough and didn't judge them, they're gonna look at you like, oh, okay. Well, what would I do? You're being very blunt and direct. Okay, I would do this, and that. I don't want to be too graphic, so I'm not going to say anything, but that's the plan. Means, okay, so this is what you would do. How would you get access to that? Or do you already have that at home or with you at school or, in your car? No, you don't. Okay. Would you know how to get it if you really wanted it, though? You do. Okay. And intent. What is their level? Are they really intending to do this? Do you really see all of these things on them? And even if somebody checks off one, we're getting the reinforcements. Everybody's rallying at that point.
Everybody.
Right. I'm hooking them up with the National Suicide Hotline number. I'm hooking them up with somebody that's locally in their community. In our community, we have the Elizabeth Hospice. I'm connecting them right away. I'm getting on the phone with Melissa Lunardini. Hey, I have a team, and this is where we can, provide them some support. I'm calling everybody to wrap around this team so that we can give them some support. And if they're because I can do school-based services and stuff like this too. So when I was doing school-based services, if they weren't directly seeing me, or they were outside of the county or the district or whatever like that, I'm talking to their school, they're directly to their school and advocating for that youth to have more mental health services if they don't already have them.
Exactly.
And if I'm not getting an answer from there as a provider, I'm going to the district. I'm calling the next person up above them because somebody is going to see this team and make sure that we don't have anybody left behind.
Absolutely. And the thing about it is when our response to things like that is so critical.
Absolutely.
Right? A non-judgmental response is so critical. And it's you can't really overlook it.
Right.
I don't think you can be too cautious. And the thing, a lot of people believe that if you're engaging in this conversation and you're asking somebody, do you feel like you want to kill yourself? You're planting that seed and that idea. And that's where we lose a lot of people by not being outright in our dialogue.
Absolutely agree. And it's again a fear-based response.
Yes.
So, it comes back to that. Ask yourself when those kind of thoughts, parents and providers, when those thoughts are coming into your mind, ask yourself, is this a fear-based response? And how is that really going to serve the youth or the team that I'm working with and that I'm trying
right
to help
now?
right
Yeah.
now? Mm-hmm.
So here's a situation, and Catrice posed this question. She said, now, how do you approach a male teen who's dealing with grief and loss and is getting sucked in by the gangs and the streets? That's a very vulnerable teen right there, right?
Absolutely, for many reasons. Absolutely. And I think a lot of that is really different because of the stigma that they may be feeling already as a male, but then also as a Black male, and then you're adding in the extra layers of being affiliated, right? And that comes with multiple layers depending on what the ranking is and where they are in that. Is their family connected to the same things, right? What area are they in and how big the impact? So many layers on that. And so that's a specifically harder because part of the reason why they may be a part of the gang is because that is family in their eyes. That is family. That is their way of connecting. That's what they were looking for, is that community, that sense of belonging. And that's maybe how they got into that. And that part is the one where it makes it especially hard for them to seek out mental health support, any kind of support services, period, because now for you to do that, if you're talking to a therapist, if you're talking to a teacher, if you're talking to any supportive partner, what does that say to you? The streets might look at you and say you're snitching, and they don't understand confidentiality and all these kinds of things at times. So if they don't understand that, then it gets misinterpreted. They don't understand that we're not allowed by law. Sorry, my light sensor over here. By law to say anything to anybody about it unless it pertains to them hurting themselves, somebody else, right, or somebody is hurting them, and they're a minor. And so when when people don't understand this, they themselves are like, I'm not talking to anybody. I'm not talking to anybody but my people, and wouldn't necessarily make it into their people. You do get those times where you can just show up. And what that might look like is, again, you just providing space. If they're talking to you at any point in time, they probably consider you to be a safe person, and that you, in some layer, you're one of the people. So just being there and providing them with support, give them a flyer, right? Give them a piece of paper, flyer. Maybe even if if you have a consent with the school, where you can give them information through the schools. Some schools have a network where they can send text messages to families. So maybe that might be a way that you can provide them with information, or via email or something like that. But a lot of times they're not giving the kids in high school. But just the fact that you're there, so give them that space. Connect and redirect is a really powerful one, because when you connect with them, then you can redirect that energy. I don't want to go and talk to somebody about it. They're going to judge me, this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
I haven't judged you. I've been here the whole time with you, and I haven't judged you at all.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to send you to somebody who I think would even be anywhere near that realm.
Yeah.
Talking to you, I got you. I can support you.
Right.
To an extent.
Yeah.
But these are things that I can connect you to, so that if you want to, and I know you don't have to, but if you want to, this is where you can get the help. I'm gonna tell you about them, even if you don't want to hear about them from me, because I care about you as a person, and I know that you have a bright future ahead of you. If you can allow yourself to be connected in these ways, and then you explain to them what those mental health services are, whatever supportive services, case management services, any kind of services that they might need, and that is the seed that you are planting right there. And every day that you show up, and every positive conversation that you have with them, interaction that you have with them, you're just watering that seed every day. And you may not see the benefits of that now, and you may not get to see that flower when it grows to what it's going to be.
Right.
But maybe later on down the line, the fact that you showed up, the fact that you provided space, the fact that you were non-judgmental, and the fact that you gave resources may save their life.
That's right.
Longevity.
That's right. Consistency, right? And I thought you hit the nail right on the head when you said, kind of find out what is the gang providing for them.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? Because the gang is filling a need, right?
Yeah,
even exploring that. What is it providing for them? So, Catrice, I hope that something that was said was able to help you with that question. Somebody said, I wanted to follow the debate, but it is, he said, it's 2 hours in Senegal and tomorrow is my job. We will keep in touch. Well, Mohammed, thank you for joining us from Senegal, and feel free to catch us on the replay so that you can hear the rest of it. And it's so interesting to hear, because he said we have some of the same problems. It's so good, interesting to hear that this is a global issue that we're talking about. Right? It's not an isolated issue. And as caregivers and youth workers and youth supporters, we have to remain vigilant.
Absolutely. And stay connected. We have to stay connected to the resources that are around us, making sure that you're updating those resources on an annual basis, so that you're not giving people dead phone lines, or dead websites and stuff like that. We got to go look at those resources ourselves. Let's go talk to some of those people, have a conversation with them, get on the phone and just have a quick, combo 5-minute conversation. And I get it. We don't all have time like that. However, we got to prioritize some of that as our time. That's part of our beneficence, right? That's part of our do no harm, is to make sure that we are up on game on what's going on in our community and who we can connect to on an instant. I know the top 3 people that I'm going to call should something go down and I need some support in terms of grief and loss, right? Or
Yeah.
suicide.
Yeah. And I think that's so important. One of the things that I have in my policies is for my teen clients, they can connect with me between sessions.
Yes.
You know, they have 15 minutes to connect with me. I'm like, if you were going through something that can't wait till the next session, reach out, you know, connect with me. And then I also give them a code to say, if you put this code in, I know it's an emergency.
That's great. Yeah, that's
You know,
great.
not just for my clients, but any teen in my girls group or any group that I'm with. If you send me this code, I know it's an emergency and you need some support right away.
Yeah.
And I think that's critical. As youth workers, we have to really plan ahead.
Hey, I'm taking that. That's incredible. I like that.
Yeah, but I also caution them, don't abuse this.
Right.
You use it and this is not an emergency and you're not in trouble, you're gonna cut off your privileges.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. As I'm going to implement that too, I think a part of that is, and I'm sure you do this, this is psychoeducation, the giving them the information around what it even looks like an emergency versus what looks like urgent, right?
Exactly.
And if it's an emergency, you probably should be calling 911.
911.
If it's urgent, then maybe you can send that to me and and you need some support, right? But if it's just a high priority,
exactly,
probably shouldn't be using that code, right? And giving them solid examples of what that looks like.
That's right. That's right. So, Anthony, wow, that hour went by really fast.
Yeah.
Really quickly. And I really appreciate you being here, sharing with the audience. You've given a whole lot of nuggets to our audience as we talk about navigating grief. So I want you to take a couple minutes and just talk to the parents or the youth worker, or youth pastor, or the teacher who's watching, and give them just a reminder on what to do if you think a child is experiencing grief, or a teenager is experiencing grief. What are some of the things that they can do?
Absolutely. And so I'll give you a quick rundown of 5 things that you can do to really support somebody who is going through grief in any capacity. So the first one is thinking about how you talk to them. If you know, it's different than if you're guessing. If you're guessing, it's really coming from a place of curiosity. It seems like maybe there's something going on. I just want you to know that I'm here and I want to be able to support you the best way as possible. So that might be your entry point. And again, that also might be a seed that's planted that you can come back on and water later on. If you know, when you're talking to them again, don't even try to don't try to make it. You don't know their experience. So sticking with things like, I can imagine, I can't imagine, what you're feeling or what you're going through. This is hard, but I'm really just happy that you were able to open up and speak to me about this. And then being able to support them in that. The second thing is understanding that, there's no timeline for their grief. You can't expect that next week they're going to be feeling better. You can't expect that next month they're going to be feeling better. As we talked about earlier, this is historical. A lot of it is historical trauma that they're going through, and the grief is going to remain for a long time until they're able to close that trauma loop. So just understanding, don't have an expectation of a timeline. Just allowing them to be where they are, validate where they are. Don't rush that process.
Yes.
Check in on them. So what that looks like is, though, checking in on them every few days. It's not a everyday thing. And I say that sparingly. Obviously, some situations are going to be when you're going to have to check in on them every day. And if it's at that level of support, then we may need to be getting somebody else involved. If you're a teacher, or another provider involved in that. And then for parents also, if you're checking in on them from time to time, deep check-ins from time to time, every day asking how was the day, type of thing. Um, if you ask a kid how are you today, how are you doing, they may say good, whatever. In their head, they're like, how do you think I'm doing? I'm breathing, right? So just asking how is today, asking how is today, be present in the right now, as opposed to like an overall sense of how they're
I
doing.
like that.
Being present in the here and now, and checking them, especially around holidays, birthdays,
Yes.
events, because these are all different types of anniversaries of a loss, whether that be a death, a transition, and so on. Different things like this are activated during the holiday seasons right now.
All right. Now.
They're happening. You got Halloween that just passed, Veteran Day is another one, right? And then we got Thanksgiving coming up, and other holidays that are in between,
Yes.
on the New Year's and things like that. So checking in with them and making sure, if it's a person who has transitioned or something like this, out of a neighborhood or something like this, how do you plan on honoring that space you were in before? If it's a person who died, is there something, a new tradition, or is there a tradition that you would like to continue in order to honor that person who has died in your life? Right. And so just thinking about things like that, how you can support them in honoring those individuals through these different holidays, or honoring those transitions they've made. It's been a year, coming up on a year since you moved from LA. I wonder if there's anything that you want to do to kind of commemorate that. Is there something that, do you want to go back and take a visit and see it through a new lens? If that's not a possibility, maybe you want to write a letter to LA, and let them know, where you are in your process. Those kinds of things. If they have some artistic stuff inside, and if they don't, maybe there's an art, maybe they want to draw or sketch or create a symbol or create some kind of metaphor for them to be able to do and construct something to give them space and energy to release, and do those kinds of things. And those are things that can be done during the holidays, but just period, to just allow for releases to come out. Understand that grief visits at different times outside. Grief doesn't happen in 9 to 5 hours, right? Grief is happening at random spotting times. Grief happens when we get out of work and when we are probably with our kids in bed sleep. As a provider, or grief might happen, at 8 p.m. or 8 a.m. before they come to school, and they don't want to come because it's going to remind them of where they used to live. It's going to remind them that they are no longer in the Middle East and they have to now go and step out of the house and it's America, but inside of their home, it's a different country, And so those are the moments that grief shows up, and we have to be cognizant of those kinds of things with them. And so helping them through that process. If it's somebody who has died, grief shows up right when they're about to take a testing class. So how can we support you? Maybe you're not taking the test right now, or maybe you're not taking the test today, but let's revisit when we can take this test.
Right.
Individuals who are influenced by the grief don't like pity. So pity parties are out of the question. You still hold accountability, but hold space for them to be able to be a part of the conversation and collaboration of when they can make those things happen for them. Also, again, speaking about honoring the individuals, and I think that's a huge piece of it. Making sure that you honor the spaces, times, and places that they can that they've been at, and where they're going, or persons or people, groups of people, maybe even that they want to honor, and figuring out ways to do that. But remember, PMI, plans means intent, and I think that and also the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. There is a number for that, and that number is pull that back up. So the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, that y'all would want to make sure that you write this down, and we'll put it. Hopefully, we can put it like in the description.
In the comment section, yeah.
Perfect. Is 1-800-273-8255, and this is 24/7. And you can talk to a confidential support person on the phone at any given time of the day, night, whatever, evening. But this is a very important number. Once again, 1-800-273-8255. Make sure that you spread that to everybody, so that people can feel supported inside of that.
Yeah.
So Thank you all. That's really the big five things that I've seen that have been really helpful in supporting people who are in grieving processes, and bereavement processes. This I appreciate you, Ms. Dillard, for allowing the space for these kind of conversations to happen, because there's not a lot of spaces that do have them.
Yeah.
We need to do a better job of having them in schools and
Yeah.
supportive communities as well.
Yeah, this is good stuff, and this is real talk. Difficult conversations, but necessary conversations for us to have with our parents, our teachers, our clergy, or anyone who serves our youth in today's society. Thank you so much for the work that you are doing and the space that you've provided for our young people, and even to educate those who serve them. That's good stuff.
Absolutely. And again, thank all the providers out there too. Every day is a new day for us to go out there and remember our why. And that one conversation that we have, that again, even though you may not see the flower blossom right now, that one conversation could be the reason why that person is still alive and around and supporting other people too who have gone through something, years down the line. So thank you all as well, just for the work that you're doing and continuously coming in and day out, as providers, as supportive people, as parents, the number one job in the world. So thank you for coming in and day out. And even if you're not able to keep it all together all the time, you're trying to do it as best you can while still supporting those that are around you. So appreciate it.
That's good stuff. Good stuff. Well, Anthony, let me get your last name right. Parham.
That's right.
Did I say it right again? Because I had something else in my mind. I really appreciate you, and I'm glad that our paths have crossed for such a time as this. This is good stuff. This is good work, and I appreciate your time sharing this information with our audience. And tell people how they can reach you.
Yes, so you can reach me two ways. You can, my direct email is Anthony LMFT. That's L as in Lisa, M as in Mary, F as in Frank, T as in Tommy at gmail.com. And then you can also come and check me out on Instagram. You can follow the page at Circle of Life Therapies. Once again, that's at Circle of Life Therapies. Circle of Life Therapies is my nonprofit private practice piece. So look forward to seeing that grow and expand to be able to help communities of color and impoverished communities as well, to just get the support that they need from multiple angles of mental, physical, emotional, psychological, spiritual health. So thank you all so much.
Yes. And if you would just, when we end, if you would just drop your contact information in the comments section, that would be so awesome. Well, thank you all so much for watching this episode of Teen Talk Live, where we discuss way more than navigating grief with teens. We talked a lot about some parenting stuff too. And please, if you're joining us on the replay, or if you're still live with us, please share this out so other people can benefit from this information, especially around this critical time. The holiday season is really important that we cue into some of these things that's going on with our teenagers, and share it. Again, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Mr. Anthony. It was such a pleasure having you. And I want to say good night, everyone, and join us next week for another episode of Teen Talk Live.